guys.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Wrestling Draft.
What is going on, everybody? It's that time again, and welcome to another episode of the Wrestling Draft. My name is David Hockney, finally in the hosting chair now that Scott McLeod has decided he's got bigger priorities ahead of the reinvention of the brand formerly known as Eat, Sleep, Suplex, Retweet. But I have not come alone, because joining me once again, it's one of my favorite returning guests. He is the host of the fourth official podcast. It is none other than Gary Morris. Gary, welcome to the Wrestling Draft.
Yes, it's nice to be here. Obviously, in a new iteration, let's a bit like NXT 2.0, which I quite enjoyed, to be fair. So no, it's nice to be back.
Yeah, we're the white and gold version of the new NXT, not the rainbow colored version, just so we're clear
Yes,
on that front. But
absolutely.
no, it's good to have you on board under this new banner. You know, we get to get our guests on as often as we can. And, you know, I did offer the invite to Andy Mitchell, but he's already been on for a start and he was too afraid to come back. So I'll leave that up in the air in case he decides to reconsider. But we'll jump straight into our top scorers of the week. And Gary, we are reviewing the fallout from Clash in Paris this past weekend. So our top scorers of the week, third place with 12 points is Jey Uso. Although he came up short in the World Heavyweight Championship match, he didn't eat the pin. He was featured a couple of times for appearance points, and he was also heavily featured on Raw with, I believe he picked up a win as well at some point. So pretty good outgoing for Jey Uso, you know, despite, you know, having him toned down a little bit these last couple of seasons.
Yeah, I think despite losing the championship, he still retains quite a prominent place on the product, which is quite so frustrating when there's champions that aren't quite getting the same level of exposure that Jey Uso is without holding a belt. But it just shows that it's been a really kind of banner year for him since the Rumble. He's been all over the product, and actually no real sign of his popularity on the wane, despite the fact he's been all over the product, which can only be a good thing if you're Jey Uso.
Yeah, it's a big booster for Scott McLeod's team as well. Given that, you know, he's had a bit of a setback with the Naomi pregnancy, I think the Jey Uso factor has really sort of helped keeping him afloat and is reflected in the team name. But we'll get to him in the main table. But yeah, it's a much needed boost for Scott's position in the table, and Jey Uso is definitely the guy to do it. But joint top scorers this week, and let me tell you, the vision is very clear. It's a 2020 vision, and I see clearly the WWE's ultimate power couple has taken the helm. Seth Rollins and Becky Lynch, both on 14 points this week, largely because both of them retained their respective championships at Clash in Paris. Becky Lynch obviously getting the win over Nikki Bella, Seth Rollins retaining in the Fatal 4-Way with some help from Becky as well. And it looks like she's been internally listed as a member of the Vision going forward. So, Gary, I want to get your thoughts on this development as the Vision starts to take a clearer view, shall we say?
Yeah, points are plenty, I think, for both. And we always expected Seth was going to be a big pick this season, having obviously won the title at SummerSlam. He was always a bit of a workhorse champion anyway. But that with a faction now with his wife in tow as well, I think it very much looks as if Becky's going to take over the Paul Heyman role of being the mouthpiece of the group. Not that necessarily Seth needs anyone to do his talking for him, but Becky is a really good mouthpiece, and you already saw that with the interactions with Punk on Raw on Monday night, and obviously the ramifications of that going into probably Friday on SmackDown. So you're probably now looking at a program that's not only just going to be heavily featured on Raw and pay-per-views, but probably SmackDown as well, which is brilliant for draft points.
Mm-hmm. And Becky Lynch, with that win as well, has cemented herself as the top scorer of the season so far. 29 points overall, 3 pay-per-view appearances, 9 TV appearances, and that 2 title TV wins with the Women's Intercontinental title and 1 on pay-per-view. That shoots her straight to the top of the table, overtaking Hobbs, Joe, and even Obafemi as well, who we were singing praises for massively in the last couple of weeks. So yeah, Becky Lynch, definitely the one to watch. A mainstay of Gary Kernahan's team, arguably the juggernaut as well. She's currently with the captaincy applied, 55 points overall, and she's completely ran away in terms of Gary's next highest scorer, Darby Allin, who's on 15. So it's been we're starting to see the juggernaut performers this time around. And same with Grant McRobbie. You know, he's got Seth Rollins as his captain, round 1 draft pick overall. He's on 39 points with the captaincy applied, and his next highest scorer is Thelka with 12 points, or is it Thekla? I can never really get that right. So
the spider.
yeah, it just goes to show the juggernauts are starting to form, and it's all down to the expansion of the vision. So we'll go and see how that affects our leaderboard. So, and it is, I dare say, it's not only a tragedy. I think there's a damn conspiracy going on, because Robert fucking Shaw and the Draft Bastards on 45, and myself with the West End Country Club on 54, we're sitting at the bottom of the table below Team Goat on 55. Like, what is going on here? It's like, I made a joke in the group chat that, you know, I swear the WWE booking team listens to this show and just goes the complete opposite of the way of the West End Country Club, because we're I mean, although Robert is competing as his own man, he is an official member of the West End Country Club, and we're stuck at the bottom. Like, how do you explain that? It's nonsense.
Well,
Total nonsense.
I think, and I think if you look at the team on paper, David, it was sound in terms of when it was picked, but it just hasn't really transpired into TV appearances. Sadly, it's been
No.
and
Just when Bliss and Charlotte seem to be the hottest product coming out of SummerSlam, they've just instantly been chucked with cold water. Like, I don't know what WWE's thinking with their booking. But anyway, back to the leaderboard. Then we have in 11th place Andy Mitchell, the man without beer, on 59. 10th place Scott McLeod. Yeet dreams are made of these on 60. That you got to thank the Jey Uso performance in the last week to help him there. JP in 9th with El Grande Acos, 63, keeping the momentum going, but still got a long way to go to make some waves up this table. Speaking of waves, it's tsunami time, because it's yourself, Gary, in 8th place with 65 points. A very solid mid-card performance, but then we jump 12 points ahead to Grant McRobbie with AI No Better Than You. So, and what was also mentioned as well is that, you know, everybody below Grant McRobbie in the table is effectively doing worse than AI, and this is a sign that the machines are taking over. So, but we'll put that in the back burner for now. 7th place, it is, oh no, sorry, 6th place, I should say. Alan Lucas, 55 and counting, 78.5 points. But then we'll jump into the top 5 with 80 points and above. So Dan Axel Jameson, the Essex Elite, on 80 points. Fourth Smith, Matt Smith, Iguana Dance with Somebody on 81. Bear in mind, this guy has Mr. Iguana on his team, and he's in 4th place. Like, you can't make this shit up. It's insane. Then Gary Kernahan, the aforementioned Becky Lynch juggernaut with Team Viscera on 88. He's been doing pretty well after a few rough seasons. 2nd place, Tom Brock. I promise I don't like that other Brock either, on 90, but it is a tragedy at the top of the table, you know, because we could be seeing another back-to-back win. Stephen Wilson, straight edge brutality at the top with 96 points. He had a lot of heavily featured performers in this past week. You know, LA Knight, CM Punk, both in the World Heavyweight title match. CM Punk obviously expanding on his feud with Seth Rollins. LA Knight getting continued exposure as well. But I think Obafemi, Rhea Ripley, a lot of basically his guys are all over the product. Essentially, his only blight is DIY, who are on a single point post SummerSlam following their appearance on NXT. So it not
to be fair, you probably expect they're going to follow that up, given the fact NXT's got an anniversary show coming up in a couple of weeks' time. So possibly more DIY and other NXT alumni, I think, to show, I think, over the course of the next couple of weeks.
Yes. So
possibly, which could be quite good for ex-people, so people that maybe got the likes of Bailey and other likes, then maybe we'll see some of that across NXT the next couple of weeks heading into that homecoming show.
Actually. So I think before we go into the Listeners League, I think we'll just quickly jump to NXT and we'll see how the standings are looking there. So as it stands, Stephen Wilson, obviously 24 points, the top scorer with Obafemi as his driving factor. Then it's JP on 19 points. Then Team Go, 18 points. Then it's myself on 17. Dan Axel, 13. And then with NXT representatives tied at the bottom, it's yourself, Gary, Matt Smith, and Alan McLucas, all on 9 points with NXT representation. The top scorer is the aforementioned Obafemi. Then second place, we have Ava Rain. And then third place, Ethan Page, who I think is doing very well, despite, being chosen round 2 by myself in the initial selection. I think as long as he affiliates himself with Chelsea Green and the Secret Harvest, it's going to do him a world of good. But we'll jump now into the Listeners League for this week, and our top 5 of the week have all got at least 100 points. So they're doing pretty well and keeping pace with the overall league. Although bear in mind the selection process was a little bit different, so I'd say they're on par with how well they're keeping up with us. So 5th place. He was number 1 a couple of weeks ago, but he's dropped to 5th now. It's Lee McAteer with Mac Attack on 100 exactly. 4th place, Ross Brady, the big Ross man, on 102.5. 3rd place, Ross Johnston with Headlocks and H on 104. Stuart Cowie, 2nd place with Charlie Haas's Angels on 106. But top scorer of the week, it's been a while since, he's made some big waves, but he's been a Listeners Leaguer since day one as H, and I'm praying that he gets his Listeners League win finally. It's Big Alan Laurie with Draft Balls 3, The Search for Draft Balls 2 on 108 points overall. His team consisting of Seth Rollins, who obviously joint top scorer for this week. I imagine he's also got the captaincy applied. Chelsea Green on 19. He also has John Moxley, still a heavy feature of AEW despite not being the AEW champion anymore. Braun Squared is also a part of his team. So that's the tag team of Braun Breaker and Bronson Reed. He's got a very heavy investment in the Vision. And as we said before, the Vision seems to be starting to take better shape going forward. Braun Squared scoring 10 points this week, tied with the Wyatt 6 and Scrap Daddy Adam Pearce, both in a combination of appearance points and across multiple shows. So yeah, Braun Squared definitely proven to be a worthwhile tag team pick. And then he brings up the rear with Sol Ruka and Nick Aldis. Sol Ruka obviously getting a lot more exposure in NXT. I think she's featured in a triple threat #1 contenders match this coming week. So I think Alan Laurie's got a lot of momentum going into these next few weeks. Appearance points from Nick Aldis alone is effectively going to be the deciding factor whether or not he wins the league this season. But Gary, I'd like to talk about your team in particular, and that's going to be the focus because you are our guest here on the Wrestling Draft. And I'd like to pick your brains from your selection process. So we'll get your team up on screen and we'll just see how well they are performing overall. So currently you are on 65 points, so somewhere in the middle in the table. Not a lot of big scorers, but they're consistent to say the least. So your big scorer is currently Tiffany Stratton, who I believe you chose in round 1.
Round 1.
Yep.
With the captaincy applied, and hopefully for kind of looking to try and obviously get title points. I think the biggest problem with Tiff is that outside of obviously that SummerSlam match, she's not really had that many title defenses and certainly not been on the card in Paris. doesn't help with that. But she's still on the product, but she's just not quite. I think if you look at the SmackDown women's scene, it's not quite as heavily focused as certainly the Raw one is when you look at, obviously they've got multiple storylines going on at the moment. You look at what's happening with Julia, the US title on SmackDown as well, and again, not a huge amount of kind of focus on that at the moment. So yeah, I think SmackDown going back down to 2 hours again has probably affected the mid card a little bit, and yeah, Tiff, while still there, probably hasn't quite kicked on as much as I would have hoped. And certainly for a round one pick, you would have probably wanted a little bit more than what she delivered so far.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's still early doors. Obviously, we've still got half the season to go. Still got the championship, so not all doom and gloom. But yeah, it's not quite been a fast start. And I think when you look at those round one picks, she's probably not one of the higher round one selections. But when I was selecting in the draft, I was obviously quite late on, so that a lot of the big hitters that we've seen were already off the table. So
Yeah. And I think it's become a sort of like an unspoken rule here in the draft that you want to get a good female pick straight off the board because you never know how well like they're going to perform throughout the season, and they're few and far between compared to their male counterparts. So yeah, I don't think it was a bad strategy to get Tiffany Stratton off the board as soon as you did. It just feels like, the last couple of seasons, they just haven't been using her as much when you compare it back to Survivor Series last year up until WrestleMania this time around. She was all over the product from the build, especially from Royal Rumble to WrestleMania. But ever since post Mania, she's sort of cooled down a
yeah,
little bit.
and I
Which,
think a lot of that's down to SmackDown doesn't really have that many heels on that show, so not really got that many opponents to go. The fact that she's still kind of recycling appearances like Nia Jax, it's like, well, we've been there, we've seen that. So I think it does require probably a bit more of a new focus on there. Obviously, moving Charlotte and Alexa into the tag division hasn't helped either, because that's obviously two really kind of credible opponents that she could have had that are kind of off the table as well. So she does kind of have the impression that she's kind of spinning her wheels a little bit, as much as she's still got the belt.
Yeah, then this makes for an interesting one because Braun Squared, without the captaincy applied, is currently on 16. And a lot of that was down to this past week, where previously we mentioned they scored 10, which is the same as the Wyatt Six defending the SmackDown tag titles against the Street Profits. So I think you hit the nail on the head with your tag team pick as well. Even if they don't necessarily compete together, much like Bronson Reed went one on one with Roman Reigns, they're still getting a lot of appearance points because they're proven to be very chaotic and a huge part of what is arguably Raw's biggest angle at the moment. So,
Yeah,
do you think there's a possibility that you could potentially switch the captaincy from Tiffany Stratton to Braun Squared?
absolutely. And I think it's on the agenda. It's probably my biggest weakness, I think, ever since I've joined the main league, is that captaincy I've been shocking. I've never quite been able to quite time it correctly in terms of having the armband on the right person at the right time. I think that was always the worry, I think, with picking Bronson and Braun, was that how many matches they were going to have as a tag team together. I think I was always very confident they were going to get lots of appearance points, but how many actually matches were they were going to get? I think see if there's a bit of a hint of them maybe getting a tag title shot, then you would probably expect them to probably win that. And then at that point, then that very much becomes very appealing to get the captaincy on them as well. But
Yeah.
as of yet, they've not quite pulled the trigger on that yet. But again, Raw's tag team division focus is pretty minimal, to be fair. But I think given what they're doing with the division, they could do a lot worse than put the tag belts on them.
Yeah. I will say though, even if you did have the captaincy on Braun Square to start off with, you'd still be in the same position as you are
Still be
right now.
mid-table, absolutely. Yeah,
Still be mid-table and I think that's partially drawn by your remaining picks. I mean, Christian Cage, for example, he's the only other one of your picks in double digits at the minute. He's on 10 points, and obviously he's been teaming with Edge again to. They got the win at Forbidden Door over Kip Sabian and Luchasaurus, but they've also been announced to have a match at I think
All
it's
out,
All Out.
all
Yeah,
out with FDR, yeah,
with FTR. Yeah, so there's potential for some
in
more
Canada,
points
yeah.
in
So,
Toronto.
yeah,
So
you,
there's
you'd expect
potential
that to
for
go quite well for them. I tend not to do too much AEW because I don't watch it. I just don't have time to stay all over that product. So, historically, I've maybe only ever had maybe one or two AEW picks, and it generally is around folk that I know. And I've had Christian now 3 or 4 times on here because he does tend to be quite well all over the product, even if he's not necessarily at the top end of it. He does appear quite a lot, and Collision, I think, is always a bit of an underrated show for points on here because
yeah.
it gets a lot of traction without it necessarily being involved in big storylines. So I think getting him when I got him round 6, I think that's a good return for a round 6 pick.
For sure. Yeah.
So yeah, quite pleased at that for him.
And we've said, sometimes later round picks, can be really good. And it's good that you've got some AEW representation on the board as well. But before we delve into your other picks, just looking at your season by season history. Now, you first started in season 20. So you've been a part of us for about 6 seasons now, one still currently in progress. Your highest score is 306 from season 21. And I believe that was WrestleMania to SummerSlam last year. So I think that makes sense because it is the longest of all seasons. But unfortunately, I don't have a thorough breakdown of your team for that point. But then your lowest score is 161.5 from season 23, just a couple of seasons later. So that's going to be sort of your benchmark for this season. You're currently on 65, and we've still got about 2 and a bit months before we reach Survivor Series. So I think with the way the scoring's going at the minute, you might be pushing towards the lower end of the scores, but it would be good to sort of, bump you up as high as you can get.
Yeah, I think what will help, obviously, the fact that I've got Drew, who hasn't really been involved too much recently, but he's got a main event match up against Cody at WrestlePalooza coming up. Not officially announced, but we know it's coming. So that will help. I think Nick Aldis is always a fairly consistent scorer, as much as Adam Pearce has had a storming week this week. But Nick Aldis is always all over SmackDown. Jordan Grace in a big platform just now with Blake Monroe, Mariah May. So again, that's not quite transpired yet into the title picture yet for Jordan. But the JC Jane, what are they doing there is just still incredibly annoying. Fact because that hurt
TNA
me.
champion anymore as well. Now that
No,
Ash by Elegance brought it back to TNA.
That hurt me really badly last year because obviously I had Steph Kerr as my captain round 1 last season, and then her losing the NXT title so early to JC Jane just completely put the skids on that pick for last season. Because I had Jordan Grace as well last year and Stephanie Vicker. So I thought, well, surely one of them is going to be the holding the belt in NXT, and they've not quite given it to Jordan Grace yet. Why? I'm not quite sure. But for me, that's the top women's program on NXT is Jordan Grace and Blake Monroe. So why it's not over the belt, I'm not quite sure what Sean's doing there. But still,
let him cook.
Yeah, but still, the one thing about NXT is that women are going to be heavily featured on that show. So having a women's pick on NXT, I think, is always going to deliver some points. Just would be nice if it was some title points.
Yeah. Note for any future drafters, if you want some good female picks on the board, dive into NXT, because it's not a case of if for Jordan Grace, it's going to be when. And I think it's either going to be, I don't think it's going to be this season, but I think next season, I think Jordan Grace will be the one to watch for sure. But as you mentioned, Drew McIntyre as well, currently your lowest scorer on 6 points. Bit of a shame, really, but I think he feels more like a victim of circumstance above everything else, because Cody Rhodes, obviously he's going through a lot of stuff in his life. He's had a second child since the draft has started, and he's filming
a movie,
new Street Fighter film as well.
Yeah.
So that sort of paused his program with
Cody,
Drew.
yeah. So it's been a bit of a shame, but obviously he was doing some stuff with Logan as well, which I felt could have maybe continued and hasn't. So I think at the time of the selections, Drew was still quite heavily featured, and then Cody's disappeared, and it's all kind of went a bit flat for it. But I think, to be fair, Drew's always been a solid pick in here, and to get
Oh
Drew
yeah,
round to get
absolutely.
Drew round 3, I think still with 2 months to go, I'm still quite confident that that will warm up again. And whilst I think winning this season is going to be incredibly difficult, there isn't a huge amount in it, particularly in mid-table. So if I can get a run, and a couple of people start to fire a little bit more, we start to see Tiffy on the show, a couple more defences, points can build quite quickly. So yeah, but I'm not too disappointed at the moment.
Hmm. Well, there's definitely a lot of potential with your team. It's still around sort of mid card level, but it's there's still a lot of opportunities for scoring points. There's all out. Obviously, Christian can get you some points there. Might be worth considering. What your next steps are when it comes to Bronze Squared, because the big talking point of this week is how much momentum the Vision has gained now that they've acquired Becky Lynch into the fold now. So Gary Kernahan will obviously be smiling from ear to ear now that he's sort of jumped up to third place as a result. But I think maybe with maybe a bit of a shift around, with where your priorities lie, you could start to get that momentum back up. But just food for thought as we end today's episode. So, first of all, Gary, thank you for coming on as a guest. It's nice to have you under
Of
the
course,
Wrestling Draft
it's
banner.
always good to be here, David. And yeah,
Hmm.
good to be back. And I think the one thing about it is the draft, especially this season.
Hmm.
SummerSlam through Survivor Series is always a bit of a kind of funny time because they're starting to kind of build up new stories. And I think, given the fact we've got new shows as well to build up to with WrestlePalooza in there and the amount of promotion that we're going to be putting into that, obviously, first ESPN pay per view, the fact that
Hmm.
it's obviously going up against All Out, albeit not at the same time anymore because All Out have shut themselves and brought that forward a little bit. But they're going to go very, very heavily. So I think anyone that's on that card is going to be all over the product, at least for the kind of 2 or 3 weeks in and around that show. So I think being on that show will be incredibly lucrative for the people that are there. So it's one of those. If you're on that show, then that's going to be a positive thing, I think, for anyone that's going to be in and around there, whether that's a 5 match card or a 6 match card. But all the people on there are going to be everywhere
Yeah.
across both Raw, SmackDown, probably NXT. They're going to
Mm.
be throwing the kitchen sink at that.
Oh, for sure. But we'll cover that on a future show as we get near the time. So, for all of our listeners, viewers out there, if you want to catch more of Gary Morris's content, you can follow the Fourth Official podcast on what platforms?
You can see us on YouTube and also Patreon for our audio content. But yeah,
Hmm.
you can find me on YouTube if you don't want to spend any money.
Yeah. And for the Wrestling Draft, you can follow us on Spotify, iTunes, Anchor, any good podcasting sites that you prefer. We're also on our socials, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. So find us there, the Wrestling Draft. And yeah, just get involved with the community. If you want to join our Listeners League in a future season, just reach out and we'll be glad to have you on board. But all that remains to say is, once again, Gary, thank you for joining us.
Pleasure.
I've been David Hockney. This has been the Wrestling Draft, and we'll see you next time.